Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 13th, 2026 City Council work session. Thank you for joining us this evening in this hybrid meeting format. For work sessions like this one, there is no opportunity for public comment, and those wishing to access the meeting can do so by watching the live stream available on our website, the broadcast on Comcast Channel 21, or by calling into one of the phone numbers listed for this meeting on the public webcast and meetings materials page of the City of Eugene website. In case of a medical emergency, an automated external defibrillator, an AED, is located on the counter behind staff to your left on the west side of this room. And in case of emergency evacuation, emergency exits are through the double doors located at the back of the room, and the doors to the patio can also be used as needed. Thank you again for joining us this evening, and I now call the July 13th, 2026 work session at the Eugene City Council to order. Before handing things over to our city manager and the staff team that is here with us today, just want to offer a few thoughts on our process tonight and a bit of a roadmap for our conversation. This work session, as you all know, is an important follow-up to our long-range financial planning workshop from just under 2 weeks ago. And we have 3 motions on tonight's agenda and about 90 minutes for discussion and direction. As we move through this material, we'll have 3 short presentations from Nancy Hetrick with Raftellus, 1 on the draft revised budget principles, 1 on the services framework, and 1 on the draft strategic plan framework. And these were developed from the council's feedback at our long-range financial planning workshops on June 30th and July 1st. As you can all understand, it was a priority to bring this work back before council's break while your workshop discussions are still fresh in everyone's mind. Thank you, staff, for all of the effort that has gone into bringing this material forward and back to us. Today is an opportunity for council to give direction on the work that is happening and will be happening over council break, so through the end of July and August into September, and returning with our work sessions in the fall. When we met at our long-range financial planning workshop just less than 2 weeks ago, it sounded like there was a fair amount of agreement among council on the draft budget principles that were brought forward, the draft services framework. Of course, we have an opportunity to discuss all of this work today. But based on that conversation and follow-up, I'm anticipating that council might want to have a little bit more time for the strategic plan refresh and strategic plan framework discussion, so I'll be keeping that in mind with our time today. While these documents don't prescribe any particular directions, they are incredibly important to guiding the work that is happening over these next weeks and months. And absolutely, our staff benefits from council's clear direction related to this work. So thank you for putting our attention on this work. Given also that these materials are in some cases familiar, in other cases the first time that you are seeing your thoughts compiled into one document today, I just want to flag for you all a reminder to our recent discussions about council's operating agreements. And our hope is that as a professional courtesy, we'll be able to engage a first round of feedback to the motions that would be put on the table related to these documents before we move into a amending process, just so that we have a chance to check in and see where everyone is at. But I will do my best to keep us moving swiftly through this process and that work. Thank you for your attention to these materials today. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to City Manager Hariyama to introduce our first topic, which is a work session on long-range financial planning and the strategic plan.
All right, well, thank you, Mayor. As a reminder to council, today's work session is really to affirm your direction provided at the last workshop, which was June 30th and July 1, regarding 3 items that the mayor mentioned. 1 is the guiding principles, the budget guiding principles. 2 is the service framework, and 3 is the strategic focus areas and strategies. One thing of note I want to make is together that these 3 things work together, but they're not separate initiatives, but as an integrated approach that aligns council goals, services, and resources. But more importantly, it shares as a foundation for evaluating investments, understanding trade-offs, and developing a budget that's fiscally responsible while providing community needs. So the desired actions for today are to consider and improve the budget principles, the service framework, and the strategic focus areas and strategies with amendments as needed. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Nancy Hetrick to guide us through the facilitated conversation.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Very nice to be back with you. Nancy Hetrick with Raftellus. Is this turned on? Okay, Wonderful. I'm delighted to be back, to see you all again. I'm here this evening really to present the outcomes of our conversation together June 30th and July the 1st, really in the hopes that we have brought forward an adequate and correct reflection of the work that we accomplished, but with fresh eyes, give you space and opportunity to reflect on each of the three elements that the mayor and the city manager referred to, get your feedback and thoughts in the hopes that we can provide clear direction to the city as they move forward toward the budget development process. So with that, we have a short deck that we will use to guide our time together. We will try to be efficient with this. I will give you the update and a preview of the topics, and then turn it back to the mayor to facilitate the conversation. As was mentioned, we have three objectives. We want to walk through three key elements from the workshop that we held. The first will be the budget principles. After we have gone through that, we will move on to the service framework. And then lastly, we'll spend our time on the strategic plan framework, which includes the focus areas with definitions and some key strategies that emerged through the last conversation. So you'll have ample time for a conversation on those elements. Wanted to give you also, just in thinking about how these fit together in an integrated approach, give a little bit of a preview of next steps so that you can anticipate and think about how these parts and pieces fit together and how this conversation leads to further actions and conversations with council. So I'm going to turn it back to Jenny for just a moment.
All right, well, thank you. So I'll go through briefly these four next steps. In August, we're going to go back to the TAG, or the Technical Advisory Group, in addition to the Budget Committee, and get their feedback, and also they'll have an opportunity to review all the work that we've done over the past several months, including the budget principles, the framework, and your work around the strategic focus areas and strategies this evening. In September, on September 16th, the council will meet again to review the themes that arise from the TAG discussions in the Budget Committee. And then we'll also discuss how services and programs will be categorized within the service framework. We'll discuss unfunded needs. And more importantly, you had raised this issue at the workshop, which was important, was to explore revenue and expense options to address the city's long-term structural funding gap. And that would be the strategic levers. In October and November, we're going to continue to discuss your direction with the Budget Committee, and then wrapping up the end of the year, we'll bring back updated financial policies for your review and approval, and then the supplemental budget.
Jenny. Okay, so just to get everybody up to speed on the outcomes of our workshop, I wanted to provide a brief recap just to bring us back to that time to understand how we engaged and the topics that we covered. And I will be preparing and delivering a complete report of the workshop after this evening's discussion so that it can be reflective of your follow-up input. So you can anticipate receiving that. So prior to the workshop, which is held on June the 30th, July the 1st, we had a series of interviews and a three-part series of informational work sessions that really laid the foundation for our work together. When we were together, we addressed a number of topics that really reflected themes that emerged through our interview conversations. During those conversations, you identified the fact that the structural budget challenge is complex, and it takes a new and revised approach to be intentional and to change the course of the conversation and not just have a repeat annually. As a result, we spent time talking about some best practices and reviewed a number of tools, including budget principles and the services framework, which we'll review tonight based on your feedback. You also identified the importance of long-range planning and really providing council's direct input on what matters for the long term. As a result, we spent time talking about key strategic focus areas that are important to you as a governing body for the city. And then we also took the next step, which was to discuss how to balance the long-term objectives identified through those focus areas in a range of strategies. You participated in an activity that started to surface some of the things that matter to you. You'll have an opportunity this evening to put fresh eyes on those strategies and make sure that they are reflective of the things you want to spend time on over the course of the next 2 years. Lastly, we spend a portion of the time addressing and reflecting on the importance of civility and effective working relationships, which you enjoy today. But part of what we had heard in the interviews was we want to make sure that that is sustained. So effective governance was what started off our time together. So with that recap, I'm going to move us on to the budget principles and share with you the updates that emerged from our conversation. Then I'll turn it back to the mayor to facilitate the conversation. So budget principles are a best practice used by many organizations, recommended by GFOA, the Government Financial Organization of Account. I'm going to mess that up. Officers Association. As a tool to guide budget conversations. It's how you talk about and make budget decisions, but really they are established and intended to guide and inform the work of this body as well as with staff as you are working through the budget. It establishes a shared set of expectations and can be a useful tool. So we presented an initial set of budget principles that we reviewed and discussed during our time together. And part of the recommended changes reflected in the set before you this evening included how they are represented so that they show a logical flow in terms of how you are evaluating budget options and opportunities. And so the structure was recommended to be as laid out here this evening. Also, there was an interest in making sure that the organization, the workforce, was reflected as one of the principles. And so we have added what is now principle number 6, to invest in the workforce needed to deliver the services, so that that becomes a lens that's applied as you are evaluating budget options. Lastly, there were two budget principles that seem to align carefully together, or naturally together, which created a revised number 3. And so advanced financial stability through continuous improvement. Brought together two principles around financial sustainability and a focus on continuous improvement with efficiency and effectiveness measures. So those are the revised budget principles. Hopefully we have captured and reflected on each of the important elements you suggested during our time together. With that, I'll turn it back to the mayor for consideration.
Thank you, Nancy. Councilor Keating, I saw your hand for the queue. And first, I'm going to turn to the council president and ask her to push the motion on the table for.
Can I interject real quick?
Certainly.
When you read the motion, it would be helpful if you, in attachment A, the revised says advanced financial sustainability. It's actually supposed to be stability. So when you read the motion, if you could just make sure that it's clear that it's as, not as in attachment A, but actually as shown in the PowerPoint or something like that, just so we capture that.
Mayor, my question is just a point of information or a clarification. It's not related to a upcoming motion, if that's.
Yes, Councilor Catherine, can I just ask clarification? Where is that change or correction? In which number?
So it's in number 3, and in attachment A, it says revised advanced financial sustainability, and it should say advanced financial stability.
Thank you.
That's the change.
Thank you. And then Councilor Keating, your clarifying question.
Thank you, Mayor. On the preview of next steps on slide number 3, this was probably a question more for City Manager Hariyama. When the Budget Committee meetings and the TAG meetings are happening in August, this body represents half of the Budget Committee. Do you foresee meeting with the Budget Committee as a whole, or citizen-appointed Budget Committee members, or meeting with them in part? Just seeking that clarification. I have a follow-up. Thank you.
Councilor Keating, thank you for the question. So as we discussed in the workshop, this would be for the community members of the Budget Committee since council will be on break. It will be informational only, kind of a recap of your workshop and the work you're doing this week, just to bring them along and also receive feedback, which we'll bring back to you in September.
Great, thank you. And then as a follow-up, I think this was answered during our workshop, but if you could remind me, please. We had established a revenue team that has since dissolved, so that's a revenue team that is not current or active. Is there any outreach to members thereof, or are we limiting, or are we, or is the next steps plan just the teams that are outlined in front of us? Is there any revenue team outreach, I guess is my question.
To date, no, we had planned on reaching out to the more the more recent groups, so TAG and TAG 2.0, as the new group is being called, and the budget committee, the community members of the budget committee.
Okay, that's helpful. What would, Mayor, if I ask one follow-up to that, what would be a process for encouraging engagement with the former revenue team members, if at all? Or is it now so far in the past that we would have to start anew?
So I would recommend allowing us to bring some of that feedback back to you, and then if it so chooses that the council would like to form that, we can carve out a process during the next time we meet for council to do just that.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Councilor Keating. I'll now turn to Council President Leach to put the first motion on the table.
Thank you, Mayor. Move to approve the revised budget principles as set forth in the PowerPoint as presented this evening.
Second. Council discussion on this motion. Councilor Evans.
Oh, well, okay, so sorry. I have Brooks making motions. So part of what we've got is we want you to be approving the summaries underneath, and if you just approve the PowerPoint, and so that's my mistake, I directed you to the PowerPoint as the correction. A better correction would just be move to adopt attachment A with a change to number 3, replacing sustainability with stability. I apologize for that.
So moved.
Does the second go with that?
Second. Thank you, City Attorney and staff and council. Councilor Evans.
No, Mayor, that was the hand is a mistake on my part.
Thank you, Councilor. Other discussion from Council in the room. Councilor Zelenka.
Number 6 says new, so that was not in the original one that was presented. We added that as a result of our discussion, right? Yeah, I'm okay with that change. Thanks.
Councilor Clark.
I just want to say I'm happy to vote in favor because I know we developed this list together and worked together to do so. But there's a certain degree of 30,000 foot amorphous kind of non-specificity to this, which I know is intentional. Again, happy to vote in favor because we developed it together, but I don't understand its ramifications yet in terms of what, if at all, are the limitations or the refinements decisions made later based on this. Can anybody be more clear with me about the direction that you're going to take from this and what it means to you and what comes out as a product as a result? I'm mostly talking to Jenny, I guess.
Thank you. So I would leave you with that these are guiding principles, the budget principles. So they are to inform, they're to give you consideration as you're making decisions. You may move outside of those principles as a body if you choose to do so, and you can create a rationale to do that. However, we're putting these before you because these are typically considerations that are best practices that high-performing councils consider when they're making budget decisions before them and for the community. So they're guardrails, but they can be modified if the council chooses to do so. But I just want to point out that they're guiding. They're not restrictive in any way. They're not black and white, but they're guidance. And they're very good, strong guidance that staff is recommending that you consider, if that's helpful.
It is, thank you. I was going to say.
Other questions or comments from council? I will offer as an addition to what the city manager just shared that I think these principles through their existence is an example of also encouraging and supporting the transparency that is identified in the first principle, which is a good sign always. And that clarity, I think, is important and a critical part of the communication that we have with the public around how it is that the city organizes and assembles its budgets and what is guiding that work, not just the individual programs and priorities and tactics, but the bigger picture. And rarely is this a topic of our conversation with the public, so it's helpful information in that way. Seeing Counselor Keating.
Thank you. Just one last clarification, Mayor. These are numbered, but they are not to be interpreted as a David Letterman top 10 list. There's no particular order. These are principles that are shared equally and broadly. Is that accurate?
Equally important. Yes, that's right.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions or discussion from council, I'll now take a vote for this motion. Councilors, please raise your hands if you are online or in the room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Council. Moving on to our second short presentation, we'll continue with a discussion of the draft services framework.
Okay, very good. So the budget principles obviously provide the guardrails Jenny just mentioned, but as decisions are going to need to be made and opportunities and strategies to address your structural budget imbalance will be made, having a services framework that allows for categorization and analysis that is objective and uses defined criteria will be very beneficial. Coming from council as direction to be implemented by staff, then we'll come back to you in the form of a recommended budget. And so we worked through a proposed framework that was reflective of some of the input we had heard during the informational sessions when we presented a series of examples from other organizations. Part of what we wanted to accomplish was something that was accessible, something that was easy to understand, and that you can learn from and adapt and use over time. So I'm going to give a little bit of a reminder. There were no significant recommended changes to the framework during our conversation together, during the workshop. And so I just want to get back into the room, a reminder of the framework and what it is intended to accomplish and how it will work for the benefit of those that are listening. But there you will see no material changes to the framework here. So first of all, starting off with the purpose of having a service framework is that it really grounds decisions in shared criteria. And that will be something that will be important for communicating with the public, but also having conversations and evaluating proposals that come before you. It provides guidance within for building budget requests. So this will be an important tool for staff, for the departments, for the executive team, for the city manager to bring back evaluated proposals to you as a part of the new budget. It also builds an important bridge between what is politically acceptable at the elected body, governing body level, and we talked about this when we were together as well, with the capacity and the resources available within the organization. So striking that important balance is informed through a services framework. This also seeks to provide a framework for long-term financial stability, and that is the goal, so that you're not having to make short-term decisions with long-term consequences. And so it really provides a longer-term lens. Lastly, it really provides visibility and reduces ambiguity in terms of how decisions are made, and that might be the most important component of the framework here before you. This is the diagram that we looked at when we were together that illustrates the importance of understanding the direction of council collectively, what is politically desirable, acceptable, with the capacity of the organization, because it's that overlap in the middle of that Venn diagram where you are able to make the biggest achievement and move things forward. So I'm going to walk through the elements of the framework again, high level. There are no changes to the contents, but there are 4 categories, and that word is intentional. These are not intended to be a ranking. These are intended to define, through definition, the services and programs delivered by the city. The first are the required services. So the definition is printed here and in your packet. It also has a guiding question that would be applied to all services and programs in the city. Over there to the right, for each of these evaluations, a budget lens that considers a number of key factors, including things like community impact, organizational impact, alignment with council's direction, service level, and other considerations are part of the analysis and part of the review that will inform the budget proposals that come before you. So the first category is the required services. Second category essential services. Again, the definition and some key questions that would inform that evaluation to clarify how things are categorized is in front of you with the same budget decision considerations off to the right. The third category focuses on core community services. And so the definition here focuses on the elements and expectations of the community and how they are experiencing the city. Questions are listed below, and the budget considerations are the right. All of this is in your packet, no changes. The last of the four service areas is the strategic priority services. And this brings us back to the importance of alignment to council direction on key focus areas and strategies. And you'll see that in the definition here. So programs and services that advance the council strategic plan framework, respond to emergency community needs, foster innovation, and create targeted community benefits beyond core service expectations. And so this is the natural lead into our next conversation, which is around the strategic focus areas and strategies. And it's the fourth of the 4 areas that would be evaluated across the service areas. Lastly, just a reminder how the framework is implemented, who owns different components of that. So the staff responsibility is really evaluating services and programs across the organization using the definitions within the framework that I just presented to categorize services before they come back to you. This process is owned and administered by staff to ensure it's consistent and the criteria is based equally across the board. The council's responsibility is making decisions. So you're providing direction on the definitions and then providing a political lens to evaluate the budget proposals and along with the budget service categories as the foundation. With that, I will move it back to you, Mayor, to facilitate the conversation.
Thank you, Nancy. Across thousands of touch points that we have as a city with our services, it is really helpful to be able to categorically organize those many different touch points. I'll now turn to the council president to put a motion forward.
Move to approve the service framework as set forth in attachment B to this AIS.
Second.
And discussion from council. Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I think this is very good work. It captures the discussion of last time. And I like the structure of the service focus areas and then the strategies, which we're going to discuss next. But what's important is, of course, the actions to implement the strategies, but that is later to come. This is the framework that will hang all that on. So that I understand, the service framework is a categorization tool and not a hierarchy or prioritization tool. Okay, got that. So meaning we could fund any or all types of services at the same time. And the next step is for staff to go and categorize these services, and services can be all or in part in different categories. They may, right, depending on how they're characterized. Okay. Anyways, I think it's a good way of helping us organize this.
Councilor Kaczynski and then Councilor Groves.
Yes, thank you. And I think I very much appreciate this framework. I think it's going to be very useful. I also feel like a lot of the very important questions will come out of this budget decision lens. And so as we are getting information about these programs and services and having these conversations, will staff also be providing information surrounding like relevant areas in that budget decision lens so that, you know, we can see like, this is a core community service that has 100% cost recovery versus one that doesn't. Is that information going to be part of the discussions as well?
Yes, and if the Twyla or Jenny wants to say something, that's the expectation. The first step is to do the categorization of the services and programs. Second, then, after that comes back before council, is to put the budget lens and use the criteria that was listed there through the leadership team on the staff side in order to inform the budget proposals that will come then before council.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for this. I do like the way the framework is laid out. Councilor Kaczynski just kind of clarified some things I was looking for, because I'm still looking for a way, how do we prioritize? Because otherwise, we're just back to where we've been for the last 20 years. and everything is a number one. So thank you.
Counselor Zelenka?
Eliza's question prompted another question. So the budget decision considerations, they're all the same for each one of the core service areas. So what is it that you're going to do with those? Are you going to then take each service, categorize it into one of these categories, and then walk through each one of these considerations and talk about them? Is that what we'll get back?
Thank you, Councilor Zelenka. So yes, as part of developing the budget, staff are working on a process to evaluate different service options. And then we would bring that back as part of the city manager's recommended budget in the spring. We would bring that information, that through line through when we're presenting those strategies and those decision points back to council.
Counselor Ye?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So I have a question, the budget decision lenses as well. I'm assuming, like, theoretically, we're hoping to be able to use this framework maybe with changes into the future, not just for this 1 year. So I'm wondering why the decision lenses are only focused on reducing and eliminating services, where there could be instances where we decide to invest in a particular service, even at a time when we're cutting in other areas. So does that get captured somewhere else, or?
So what makes me want to highlight is the strategic priority services. And so that is really where you're going to see some of the investments come in. And so that's where the trade-off. So we may have to reduce in other areas in order to invest in what council's priorities are. And every 2 years, there may be trade-offs that are made, but that's where you would see the investment. But in order to do that, we may have to either reduce or look at providing services differently in order to create capacity for the investment that you would like to see made.
Any other questions from council? And seeing none, we will now take a vote on this motion. Councilors, please raise your hands. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the motion passes with a vote of 8-0. Thank you for that overview. I'm going to turn it back to Nancy to move into a presentation of the draft strategic plan framework, and then see how we're doing with time and how we want to approach this discussion.
Perfect, thank you, Mayor. So we had we spent more than a half of our time together focused on the strategic focus areas and talking about what success looks like. What are the things that will be important to you as a body to allocate resources towards and spend time working on over the next 2 years, but also with a long view in mind. And so this is really the place to think about that balance between not losing the long-term direction and expectations, hopes you have for the community, but also how you are going to navigate short-term decisions within limited resources over the next 2 years. And so what I'm going to present to you tonight attempts to reflect the spirit of the conversation, the words and the interests that we talked about in the room, both through our kind of post-activity, but also through the conversation. And then, of course, we'll turn it back to dive in deeper, but let me do a little bit of the framing here first. I also want to just make mention of the fact that the city's current strategic plan is toward the end of its time, and there is a need for a variety of reasons to get direction from this body around what is going to be most important as a bridge to a time when you can do another full strategic plan. And so that's what we're talking about here, your interests and areas of focus based on your understanding and expectations for the community. Okay, so on this next slide here, we have the 5 key strategic focus areas that have had some refinement based on council input. You may recall, as a result of the interviews that I held with you prior to the workshop, we had some initial potential focus areas, and we had some themes that really stood out and emerged. There seemed to be a fair amount of alignment in the big buckets, right? The major areas of topics to focus on over the next couple of years. The detail and the strategies are the areas perhaps where there may be some different perspectives. And so we presented those and we did some refinement. The top one there, financial stability, which is how that got translated into the budget principle, had been financial sustainability. So based on council's direction, we reframed the naming of that. As with the community safety, I had heard loud and clear an importance on public safety, but it was quite clear when we were together in the workshop that that's a broader concept and a broader need and interest for this body. And so we have renamed that to be community safety. We also incorporated the idea of livability into that third focus area, so it's thriving, livable community. So it focuses on things beyond economic vitality, really focusing on how people engage and enjoy the city of Eugene. And so that one was also revised. The other focus areas of housing and homelessness and transportation and infrastructure had some refinement in terms of what that looks like and what we want to make sure gets incorporated. The naming did not change. To the right, you see example descriptions of what those are intended to include. And we have tried to be reflective of the council's interest in conversation during the workshop, using the words and the posted ideas that you presented during our time together. And so they present the focus and provides a little bit of definition of what you're striving for, what the goal of that area may look like. And so those are the 5 focus areas. And in addition, you'll recall when we were together, we mentioned one focused on organizational excellence. We agreed during our time together that that's really a focus of the organization, and it sort of bridges all of these things, how the organization functions and the expectations and the level of service that's provided, focusing on getting to yes and customer service, which are very important to this body. Are reflected within each of these. And so it sort of stands and bridges all of them together through the organization. So we kept the focus here on the 5. I'm going to walk through now each of those 5 areas, and you have this in your packet as well, with some high-level strategies that are intended to reflect the spirit of the conversation that we had. And when I'm done with the presentation, you'll be able to provide comments and feedback as to how well we represented that, or if with hindsight and some space, there may be other things you might want to consider. So the first is financial stability. There were 3 key strategy areas that emerged. One is simply to align resources through the city's service framework, which we've just talked about. So using that as a tool to inform the budget process, to build a long-term financial stability plan. And you can imagine for each of these, there may be a whole series of tactics and the details that will be necessary to accomplish these strategies. And the last one is to strengthen and diversify revenue. So really making sure that there's a focus on how you utilize or increase the sources of revenue available to deliver services. The next focus area, community safety, has 4 strategies. The first is to focus on strengthening the trust and transparency with the community. Next, we have ensuring timely, effective emergency response, and so traditional public safety, police and fire services. Reducing crime and strengthening code compliance, and then strengthening partnerships that support behavioral health and crisis response. And so really acknowledging the broader importance of community safety beyond traditional methods. Next, we have the focus area on thriving, livable community with 4 strategies. The first one, to sustain Eugene's library, parks, and cultural programming. So keeping that in view as a part of a livable community. Expanding economic and job opportunity for shared prosperity within the community. Keep public spaces, parks, and waterways clean, safe, and accessible. And then advance community resilience, climate action, and environmental stewardship. So this speaks to all of the environmental areas of interest and focus and goals that you have for Eugene. Next, we have housing and homelessness. Here we have 3 strategies listed as increase and accelerate the production of diverse housing types. We talked about the importance of housing affordability as a measure, and that's part of the definition on the initial page within the city of Eugene. So keeping housing affordable for all. Removing barriers to housing production. So this is how the city evaluates and makes the ability to create increased development opportunities more accessible. So reducing those barriers by evaluating how services are being, or permits and development are processed. And lastly, coordinating with regional partners regionally to address homeless response. Lastly, we have transportation and infrastructure with 4 strategies here: advancing transportation safety, investing in a connected multimodal transportation system, modernizing and maintaining city infrastructure to support community needs, and pursuing funding partnerships for infrastructure investment. Now, one thing I would like to just remind council that with these focus areas and these strategies, we're trying to still bridge a long-term focus for the community. So some of these things may extend beyond a 2-year horizon and require long-term momentum, but because they're important, you want to make sure that they remain in view. The tempo and the degree of investment will depend on how you choose to allocate the resources you have available. So it attempts to strike a balance by providing focus within the budget. So those are the preliminary focus areas and strategies based on our conversations 2 weeks ago.
Thank you, Nancy, and especially thank you for taking the time to walk through the strategies underlying each of these focus areas. This item is a little bit different from the first 2 presented today in that it really is the council's first opportunity to see your workshop conversation compiled in this way. We now have 5 key focus areas and multiple strategies listed beneath each, as well as a brief overarching statement, though that seems tertiary in relationship to those first 2 pieces of information. What I'm thinking about in terms of our time and a check-in process is that I think before we put a motion on the table, I would just like to do a round walking through the wards, and I'll begin with myself to check in on how people are feeling about what we see in this update to the strategic focus areas, and then we will move on to our discussion before bringing the motion forward. So I'll just begin with a 1-minute round and a 1-minute round through each council ward by saying that I really appreciate this work. And as a mayor who has been in service for approaching 2 years, this type of update to the direction and really a refresh to the first ever strategic plan for the city of Eugene, I think is important and can see the value in this already in terms of how this will help to organize our other efforts and clarify our positions and the potential partnerships that we might have with others. I will say that very broadly, and one of the reasons why I appreciate the detail with the strategies is that the words affordability, belonging, economic development, climate responsiveness, these are 4 words that I would expect to be really central in thinking about what we are accomplishing and working towards in this next few years. So that's just a general piece of feedback. There may be a fifth word that's in there, but that I think is important. So we'll walk through our wards quickly with just a first with Ward 1, and we'll walk up through the wards.
Okay, I was not ready to go first. All right. Thank you so much for all the work that you've done on this. I would say I feel it does a very good job of capturing the broad discussion we had and some of the subtleties and places where there wasn't necessarily a full, everyone's exactly viewing everything exactly the same way. So I think it does a good job there. There are places I think where I could wordsmith, but I feel like that's the case with any document that is written by a group, is you could get really into wordsmithing. I will say that I feel like almost everything I would see as a priority can be encapsulated with this. The one place where I kind of feel like it isn't necessarily quite getting there is under the community safety one, whereas the broad conversation is about reducing risks through prevention, early intervention, and effective response. But I'm not really seeing a strategy other than strengthening partnerships to support behavioral health that is really looking at that prevention and early intervention. Like, we're not seeing anything about our municipal court or anything like that, and I'm over time, so.
Thank you. Ward 2, Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. This is going to be rapid fire. I greatly appreciate this. I wish we would have started with the strategic focus areas and strategies and then moved down into the framework and the revised budget principles from there, but here we are. So I want to underscore my support, especially for the strengthening partnerships to support behavioral health and crisis response. In the strategic focus areas for housing, there's a clause that says remove barriers to housing production. One path council could take is to expand the urban growth boundary, and it's one I don't have the appetite for. I would much rather see us build up and not out, protecting our forests to the south and our farmlands to the north. I think that broad statement puts us potentially in a pickle. And finally, I see a dearth of council's longing to strengthen relationships with existing partners and vendors. I was a broken record when we met June 30 and July 1 around animal services, and I don't necessarily see that articulated here in this document.
Councillor Zelenka.
Yeah, I like this structure as well. On the thriving and livable community, I appreciate strategy for advanced community resilience, climate action, and environmental stewardship, that was captured. On the housing and homelessness focus area, it mostly just focuses in on housing production. And strategy 3, coordinate regionally on homeless response, really inadequately captures the necessary homeless aspects of this focus area. Granted, our conversation wasn't about homelessness, it was about housing production, but this focus area should mention access to services that are necessary to pull people out of homelessness, including specifically mentioning doing something about the lack of affordable housing, mental health services, and substance abuse, which are the causes behind homelessness. Homelessness is the symptom of those long-baked problems. So hopefully we can move this forward and have maybe the staff bring back an additional strategy under that focus area so we can move on expeditiously.
Ward 4, Councillor Gay.
Thank you. So yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I think this is an excellent start. I was very pleased to read through it. I agree with Councillor Zelenka that we need to do a little more work around homelessness and have a strategy or two that is a little more specific. I feel like this particular one could mean we're not really doing anything but talking to people. So I think we need to, be a little more specific about what we're talking about. And then in community safety, I thought the words reduce crime are doing a lot of work in this. I mean, that could really, I think that's trying to, I guess when I read it, that to me includes prevention, it includes early intervention. But I don't know if everyone reads it that way. And so I'm wondering if that is what we mean, if we need to be more specific so people understand what we're saying. Those were my initial thoughts, but I was really impressed.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. My initial thoughts on this are fairly diametrically opposite of my friends Alan and Matt with regard to housing and homelessness. I like the way this is written and the way this is laid out. And the reason is because something that my friend Matt has said he's diametrically opposed to, I think is the biggest mistake we've made in the last 15 years. And the reason we're in the financial box we're in is because we haven't been willing to grow out as much as we grow up. And I think having this kind of language gives us the option to do something different about it if we see the wisdom of doing so. The other piece that struck me was in the financial stability language, the first one. The first builds a long-term financial stability plan. I was actually hoping that's what this process was in more specifics. And so it's good to know that we're going to do more work there, but I was actually hopeful we would get into those specifics now.
Counselor, I'm going to stop you because you're probably 15 or 20 seconds past the first minute round, but we will return for continued
I
discussion.
do have a comment on the last one, too, so.
Thank you. Counselor Evans.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I like the work that's been done so far. I think that my focus in terms of these items is more in the neighborhood of public safety and transportation. And I think this gives us a good point for us, a benchmark for us to look at how we're going to move forward and what direction we're going to move forward in all of these areas. So, I'm good with the direction we're going so far.
Counselor Leach.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just in general, I am really impressed with the way that this has been all put together. I see all of our voices from the workshop here represented, so thank you. Kind of commenting on some of the other pieces that have been brought up, I don't have a problem with remove barriers to housing production. I think when it gets down to the specific tools, then we can kind of work on that. The coordinate regionally on homelessness response, I do think that could be built out. That kind of speaks just to saying like, oh, here's our Lane County partner, we're just going to coordinate with them. We do a lot of prevention work, and I think that should be captured. We do, tenant protections and other work, and we have teams focused on that work as well. So maybe we can add a fourth there. And kind of similarly, Councilor Kaczynski mentioned about the strengthening partnerships around behavioral health, if we can encapsulate our specific work as well.
And Counselor Groves.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for this document. I like the framework that's proposed. I think that's something we can work with. I wish we had time, and I know we don't, but I wish we had time to hear from all of our department heads. They're the subject matter experts in these areas, and I would like to hear their thoughts. On housing and homelessness, I agree with Councilor Clark on the housing piece. I agree with Councilor Zelenka on the homelessness piece. I think we need a little more detail there. On community safety, I like it, but there's nothing that addresses how far behind fire has fallen in providing services. I mean, we have the same number of firefighters on the street today that we had in 1981, and we're not keeping pace with demand. And now that we've proposed or served notice for separation, that was part of what merging was for, was to have more resources to move back and forth. So we need to really, I think, put this higher on the list. Thank you.
Thank you, Council, for that check-in and all of the comments shared. I'll now open the floor for continued council discussion in our typical rounds. Councilor Zelenka, then Councilor Keating, and then Councilor Clark.
Yeah, I liked what you said, Randy. In community safety, I kind of assumed the fire was in there, but it's not. And that it just says reduce crime and strengthen code compliance. Doesn't cover it. Maybe is it effective emergency response? Is that what that's supposed to mean? I don't think I really like that. But effective emergency response, I guess, that's too.
You could add resource allocation to the end of that, and that could capture.
What do you mean?
Ensure timely, effective emergency response and resource allocation that gets to the staffing and resource issue that Councilor Groves was alluding to.
When you guys said, when you guys were writing effective emergency response, what were you thinking about?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think that it was an attempt to reflect on both police and fire. And we tried to weave that in throughout, including through the statement that is above, to reflect on those pieces. I mean, I hear what you're saying in terms of the clarity around catching up and keeping pace relative to the resources. And so, I mean, I think that it's something we can easily address through strategy 1, strategy 2 in particular. I think each of those can touch on both elements of public safety. But I'm hearing a specific and separate interest to incorporate.
Yeah, because the italic part, and I don't know the import of that, the success statement. Yeah. When I read that, I don't get fire safety or fire response, like prevention, early intervention, effective response. Yeah, I suppose, but it's so broad that it almost doesn't capture it for me. And then, Mike, I hope you were not misinterpreting what I said. I was suggesting we add to that the housing and homelessness, not instead of. So we'd add a fourth strategy, not delete the other ones. I think the other ones are critically important, as you do.
Councillor Keating.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I would put myself in the support category column of adding that fourth bucket to ameliorate houselessness as well and expand services. So I think we're all kind of rowing in the same direction in that piece.
Like the Norway.
Yeah, right. The focus areas and strategies bucket of community safety I thought was strong, but I hear loud and clear the need for resource allocation for our first responders, or maybe be a little more specificity around that piece for our firefighters. So thank you for that. And I actually applaud the reduced crime and strengthened code compliance piece. Especially on the heels of 4th of July when the community's clamoring for some code enforcement around fireworks as we rapidly approach an incredibly dangerous fire season around the corner. And then finally, I didn't have time in my first minute to underscore a couple other pieces, strategic focus areas that I really like. And it's funny because I'm going to be kind of arguing against how the broad piece about housing that I pointed out at first about how general it was, because I appreciate how general the financial stability terms are in regard to strengthening and diversifying revenue and giving our team the flexibility to really be creative in regard to collecting revenue and increasing our revenue for everything that we do. We find that we are proposed cutting. We're finding ways to raise revenue as well. So I appreciate that piece in the financial stability, and finally in the thriving and livable community. It hadn't been mentioned yet, but I wanted to amplify the point about keeping our public spaces, parks, waterways clean, safe, and accessible. I thought it was an excellent. You brilliantly captured, I think, what we were trying to say when we met in our workshop setting. In sum, these are also interconnected. They complement each other well, and in sum, you did an astute job of collecting compiling our collective wishes, and this is really exciting work. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Clark, and then Councillor Kaczynski.
Thank you, Mayor. Alan, thank you for the clarification. I actually, I'm not in favor of adding the fourth one, while I understand the importance of why you wanted to do it, and that makes sense to me. I actually don't agree that I think that's our job to do it. I think it's the county's. And as the federal and state funds go away to do more and more of that work, I think it's going to give us real budget challenges to try and step up locally with money to fill the hole of federal and state dollars that go away. And I don't want to emphasize that. I'd rather do it by working better in partnership with the county and with our regional other agencies. I agree with Randy about what he said with regard to fire. We will have to step up on our investment there as we change what this is, no matter how it changes. And lastly, on that financial stability piece, the last one on there actually gave me a little bit of heartburn because of the way it's written. I want very much to strengthen revenue. I don't necessarily feel it's important in any way to diversify it, although I'm willing to be open to it. What I'd like to see us do is actually have a conversation about strengthening the major revenue source to the body, which we have never, in 20 years I've sat here, had. To say, okay, if the major source is property tax revenue and we need more of it, what dollar amount in increased assessed value needs to be added to the picture of what we have today in order to have the right amount to produce the revenue we need? And what do we need to do to add that amount of accessible value to our community? We've never had that conversation. And I would love it if we did. Thank you.
Counselor Kaczynski.
Yes, thank you. I'll say, I think one of the things I do appreciate, and I think it makes some of this conversation a little bit challenging, is that this is broad and it's trying not to get into specifics and specific prioritizations to a large degree, which I think is useful for this because it leaves that space for some of these other conversations about the how and the how do we remove barriers to housing, how do we ensure timely emergency response. All of those questions and where those fall priority-wise and funding-wise, I think are there's space for that within this plan without having to like list everything point by point. So I think that's very good. I think I do agree, and I think some of the conversation about how we include housing and homelessness particular in there is also very similar to my comment about prevention and early intervention in the public safety realm. I feel like some of this is almost sort of a cultural, how do we approach these problems? Are we really just looking at like, okay, we're going to be reactive, or are we looking at we're going to be proactive? And I don't feel like there's a really good bullet that strategy that kind of encapsulates that, but I feel like it does get into that question of, you know, are we only going to be reactive to homelessness in our community, or are we going to be proactive and try and find solutions in advance? Are we only going to be reactive to public safety, community safety issues, or are we going to be proactive and try and prevent them? And I feel like that's kind of hinted at with some of the statements, but I think both with the homelessness piece and the safety piece, there isn't really a strategy that I think that kind of gets at that. And then as far as the strengthening and diversifying revenue, I am very glad that is in there. This is intended to be sort of a 2-year, what are we focusing on the next 2 years? And I think if we aren't talking about ways to diversify our revenue, we're going to not be able to do a lot of the other things that are in the strategies, because long-term solution, we need both short and long-term solutions when it comes to revenue and stability. So, thanks.
Counselor Evans and then Counselor Groves.
Okay, my mic is working now. All right. I think there's a piece here that is nagging on the back of my brain that I can't get away from in this, and that is how do we deal with the fact that we don't have the federal and state partnerships, or definitely not the federal partnerships at this point, in terms of providing housing subsidies for affordable housing. One of the key pieces of this is in this whole chain that we're talking about as far as housing and homelessness is concerned is the affordability of housing. And what I keep running into with various constituents and people across the city is, continuously, people who work in the service industry and similar industries of that do not have the revenues to be able to support increasing rental rates, insurance, utility bills, all of that, which is basically, deepening our homelessness problems and issues and not getting us out of it. And so I think that we also need to have continual conversations with our state partners, as well as our other municipal partners around the state and around the country, about how do we get to a point where we can provide a different type of and a different kind of housing subsidy that can be sustainable over time and that will provide some semblance of continuity for people who are trying to move out of unstable homelessness and unstable housing, I should say, into more sustainable and longer term housing, particularly considering the incomes that they're dealing with. Incomes are not going up, folks, but the price of potato chips are.
Counselor Zelenka? Oh, I'm sorry, Counselor Groves and then Counselor Zelenka.
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager, do you have enough to work with here, or do we need an amendment to the motion on community safety?
I think we have enough to work with. What the solution is probably to come back to you on Wednesday with what we heard, and then allow the council to say, thumbs up, or whether we need to make a further modifications. I made a quick list, but maybe Nancy, you also want to go through what you have as well, because there's themes that came up that we can explore. And some I heard more support for than others, but they are language to clarify public safety, emergency response and resources, crime prevention, early prevention, proactive facilitation of accesses to services, affordable housing to address the homelessness issue that Council Member Zelenka raised. I heard animal services. I didn't hear others echoing for that. And there was conversation by Councilor Clark with respect to financial stability, but again, there wasn't a specific amendment that I heard, so if you want to weigh in on that, that's the one blank that I do have.
And then I had another point I just wanted to make, and I have no intent to make a motion here or anything, but I'm assuming during the budget process, when we start talking about strategic objectives, we can look at programs that are touching on more than one issue and helping our unhoused. So that would be the place to bring that up, I'm assuming.
One thing I would like to provide the council is, so when we come back to you in the fall, one thing that we can do is once we get direction on the strategies in particular, because I think everyone is good with the focus areas, is to show you what that looks like with some tactical objectives underneath those strategies. So you can really see a higher level working plan, and that's going to be what staff takes to start building the budget. And so I think that that tactical piece will be really important, because then you can start seeing what the strategies look like, boots on the ground in practice. So I hope that that will be helpful.
That would help me very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, Mikey said we've never actually had the conversation about what it takes to grow our way out of this budget problem. But in fact, we did. On May 11th, 2026 long-range financial plan, there's slide 23, talks about the amount of investment that we need in residential, commercial, industrial, and multifamily to generate $1 million. And it's very telling. Our budget holds $10 million. We'd need $2.9 billion worth of residential investment, or $2.3 billion worth of commercial industrial investment, or $3.6 billion worth of multifamily, which points out to me that those numbers are so large, that kind of investment over the short term doesn't allow you to solve your budget problem in the near term. So growth is a good thing for the community, I think, and it's a good overall strategy, and we've got to keep our eye on the ball, but it's a terrible short-term budget crisis tool, because you just can't grow that fast and have that much revenue or that much new investment in our community to get the property tax revenue to solve our budget problem.
If Councilor Clark and then Councilor Evans, I see your hand up, so I want to be sure that that's a request. Thank you. It's Councilor Clark.
Thank you, Mayor. My friend is wrong about one thing, but right about a little bit of it. He's wrong about the fact that we've never had the conversation, because we haven't. We brought up those numbers on that day that he mentioned. That's true. But we've never had the conversation that number is too big for us to ever deal with. We've never talked about it relative to the rest of the community and found out that it's not a ridiculous number, and that it must be possible, and that it requires the following policy strategy, different decisions in order to get there. We've never had the conversation about what different policy decisions could we make to actually arrive at it. And he's correct that it isn't a short-term budget solution. It's a long-term one. And that's been my problem and the point of saying we never have it. We never solve the long-term problem. We keep saying, well, it doesn't work for the short term, so we can't do it. And we're in the box we're in because we've made very bad long-term decisions, and we need to have a long-term strategy and a long-term in-depth discussion, in my opinion. Thank you.
Councillor Evans and then Councillor Kaczynski.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. You can add my name to supporting Councilor Keating's efforts around animal services. Correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but we still are operating the First Street Emergency Shelter from the city's perspective, and then we've got Green Hill, which is operated by the county out on Green Hill Road. One of the suggestions that was brought up in previous budget conversations was, how do we close and consolidate the First Street facility into Green Hill? And I don't think that we got a clear response on that. I know that the First Street is for distressed animals and animals that are in some dangerous situations. But again, I think that we need to have a more comprehensive and creative way to addressing our animal service situation, because part of this is that the number of animals that we have out on the street and other situations has gotten to be dangerous and out of hand, and we really need to have a better way of addressing that and a better way of taking care of these animals.
Councillor Evans, your closed captioning was clear the entire time, but the volume went up and down a bit as you were speaking. We did hear you, and we have your feedback captured, but just so you know,
Okay.
it was a little hard to hear.
But yeah, I don't know what's wrong with my, technology, but I'm trying to work through it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kaczynski and then Councillor Keating.
Thank you. Well, I deeply appreciate and love our animal services, our fire service, all the things that we do that are critically important, and looking forward to having further discussions about how we continue to support those. I also am very nervous about getting into specific programmatic priorities in this document, just because I feel like then what ends up being the priority ends up being the thing that someone mentioned at the table, as opposed to looking at it through the lenses that staff are going to come back to us with like, here's what's critical, here's what's, here's all of the information with the framework. So as much as I wish that we were at a phase in this process where we were doing prioritization of programs and services and resources, I don't know that I necessarily feel that this is putting it in the strategic plan or strategic plan framework, whatever it is that we're calling this, is kind of the way to do that. So, to the degree that we're stating sort of broad strategies as opposed to specific services, I would appreciate that continuing within this plan. I also think that some of the conversations that we've had at the table, I think it was you, Councilor Groves, at the very beginning, who were like, we're talking about this sort of, or it might have been you, Councilor Clark, it was someone on this side of the table, talking about how we kind of came in, this is called the long-range financial strategies, and we really haven't gotten into some of the really important conversations surrounding the long-term financial strategies, including how do we solve our long-term and short-term revenue concerns? How do we prioritize our different services? And so I think, keeping this for what it is sort of a first stage. And I think that some of the conversation here is I feel like we came to a very collegial, mostly consensus-based space for this document. And I just want to acknowledge that I think the next round is probably going to be a lot harder because I do think we have some very real philosophical differences as to how to solve these challenges. And I want to make sure that we move into those conversations both in conjunction with budget, but also, having it be really clear that that there's going to be space for those discussions, because I think, Councilor Keating brought up the Revenue Committee, right? Those are all pieces that we need to keep moving forward with this.
Councilor Keating.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Councilors Evans and Kaczynski for their perspectives. I especially want to welcome and appreciate the perspective by Councilor Evans in regard to the animal services, because it's a responsibility we have by state statute. In ORS, mandated that we as a municipality deliver some semblance of animal services. I'm obviously not quoting Oregon State statute verbatim, but I would hope that it would have been highlighted in either the community safety bucket or the thriving livable community bucket. In the thriving and livable community space, we're already calling out 2 departments, library and cultural services and parks. But there's no mention about our state mandated responsibility. And I would hope that, or you can make an argument in the community safety space that strengthening code compliance is one element of that, but also the strengthening partnerships. And I think that the piece that would need to be married to the strengthening partnerships would be with vendors or with our with vendors or our not-for-profit partners who are supporting said work in regard to animal services. So I appreciate the perspectives. I do think that it's germane and it's important to cite elements that are our responsibility through ORS. And then just to add my feedback in the timely, effective emergency response piece and adding the potential for resource allocation, I would be very comfortable with adding the resource allocation for first responders, just to make that a little more clear. Who exactly we're talking about. I know that opens up a whole nother can of worms, because then who are we defining as first responders? But just from this community member's perspective, I hear first responders. Of course, I think of our Eugene fire and EMS team, who are often the first to respond in a life-threatening situation. No shade or disrespect to our law enforcement partners. They are not overtly called out, but each one of these buckets clearly does deal with the work that EPD does on a regular basis, and I would find it appropriate to add the first responders piece if we're going to mention resource allocation in one of these community safety buckets. I hope that's helpful direction, and I'd love to hear where my colleagues are in their kind of wish list or thoughts around how we reshape these documents as well. Thank you.
So, Council, I just want to observe a couple of things and then also ask for one clarification from City Manager Hariyama. And the first is that I think some of the discussion, which I very much appreciate, that has been brought up even in just the past several comments by Council, has to do with the information that will be much more clearly presented to Council through the service framework and the development of that document that you have just approved. Questions about things that are required by state regulation, that are legal requirements of the city, those will be clearly called out in that document and consistent with the conversation about required services. And I think that will be incredibly helpful in this conversation. I also think the discussion, and Councilor Kaczynski, to your point, that we are not trying to bring every program up to the level of the strategic plans, kind of big rocks inside of the vase, so to speak, but we are trying to get clarity around the different strategies. And I think the discussion today has been very helpful in adding some important feedback to what has come to you in this first draft that you're seeing today. So, City Manager, it sounded to me from a couple of minutes ago, you observed that we could essentially bring some of these updates to the strategic plan framework and the strategies back to council on Wednesday at our work session and still have this completed before council break.
That's correct. And what I would recommend this evening is that if the council has an appetite for it, is to do a motion approving the strategic focus areas only, since there is alignment on that.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question to you, if that would be helpful, because I do very much appreciate these focus areas as a tremendous step forward for our community and given the direction from the body. And so with that, I will turn to the council president and city attorney. Please clarify if needed. But this would be a motion to approve the strategic focus areas, the 5 strategic focus areas identified in the strategic plan framework.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Move to approve the strategic focus areas as set forth in attachment C to this AIS.
Second.
Any further discussion from council? Seeing none, I'll now take a vote for this motion. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the motion passes with a vote of 8-0. Thank you, City Council and staff, and Nancy Raftelis. This concludes our agenda for today, and I now close the July 13th, 2026 City Council work session. We are adjourned.